there are personnel problems with this team, but coaching has been one of the many problems. And it's a shame because it felt like when they got Trevor Lawrence that this division I thought was going to become Jacksonville's for a long time to come. And not that they'd go unchallenged for it, Trevor, but you could see for 10 years, like the Jags could rip off 6 or 7 division titles because they got this guy. And we are nowhere close to that. It's unfathomable.
Welcome to the opening bell of the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. Trevor, Sikkema, and Connor Rogers here with you guys. A Fix Your Franchise episode of the program. And we're doing the Jacksonville Jaguars this week. We heard the cries of the people. And man, it feels like this has been a cry for months since we started the Fix Your Franchise series, Connor. This year, people have been asking for the Jags. And we wanted to wait a little bit because, one, still got their head coach. They still got Doug Peterson. We didn't know what was going to happen with general manager. We wanted to kind of have a better idea of where they were going to be in the draft order. But to quote you in text message earlier this week, said, we doing the Jags Fix Your Franchise this week? You said, yeah, these people need some kind of hopium. So here we are. We are your local hope dealers. We are the Breaking Bad of making hope.
We're going to
delivering it to the people.
Yeah, we're getting in the rundown trailer.
When we make shirts, we might need to have hope dealers, as if sex addict is not enough of a of a slogan here for the podcast. How you doing, buddy?
Do you call it a Winnebago or an RV?
I exclusively call it an RV.
Yeah, me too. But I feel like more people should use Winnebago. Is that like the equivalent of Taylor Hammond pork roll or what do they call it? Like when you make a copy of something, but some people call it the name of the brand. I feel like it's that. Like some people call it a Winnebago because that's the name of the brand, but the actual name of the vehicle is RV, recreational vehicle.
Right.
I like when people use Winnebago though. That's old school dirty.
Are you saying that this is where we're making the hopium?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. I follow you now. So instead,
I know that seemed wildly random.
Maybe that was incredibly random, and that's why I was laughing so hard. Maybe before we get to the yacht, maybe we got to travel the country.
Yeah.
Just giving out hopium to the people of America.
Gas up the Winnebago and cook. If we did Fix Your Franchise
on the road
from a Winnebago, but like we parked it and sat outside in the fold-out chairs, it's something. That's when you know the pod's made it. When we have the budget to do Fix Your Franchise like that, it's not that expensive, but it's definitely more expensive than us sitting at home.
Depends what kind of depends what kind of Winnebago you've got.
Could we get someone to sponsor it?
Ooh, now we're talking. Hey, if you're out there. And you want to sponsor the pod with a Winnebago, we'll take your $5.
Take any RV company.
That's true. We're desperate.
Tow jet skis behind it.
I'm actually really behind on my bills. This is just a way to say like I'm broke, guys. I don't know what to do. No, I'm just kidding. Jags fans, it's finally here. We're talking about Fix Your Franchise.
They've waited long enough. We're sorry.
We have, but again, we wanted it to be a little bit more solidified here.
Yeah.
And we wanted to have a better picture of, honestly, don't mean to be harsh, but like how bleak was this going to be, right? Like, was it going to be okay? Well, they're still kind of right there because the last 2 years they finished 9-8. 1 year they made the playoffs. The other year they didn't. They've kind of been right there. Is it going to be the same thing for Jacksonville, or is it going to be a lot worse? Unfortunately, it's a lot worse, but that does make this exercise a lot more fun. If you're new here, what's up? Please subscribe to the channel. We would love it. Obviously, I said I'm behind on my bills. Need to pay those. Please subscribe to the channel. But what we'll do is we'll get to how we got here. We'll talk about the record, everything like that. We'll talk about some draft woes, some head coach or GM candidates if we think that applies. We'll give you a free agency strategy, and then we'll give you a 3-round mock draft at the end of the show like we do for all of these. Dude, where do we start with the Jags?
Trent Baalke.
You want to start with Trent Baalke? I feel like we got to give a little bit more of a background before we get to Trent Baalke.
Yeah, you're right. I guess he can be the bow on the Gracie just marches her ass in here mid-pod, looking around. Sorry.
She smelled the hopium. She smelled the hopium.
She's a scavenger. She's looking to chomp on some hopium, and boy, do we have a pile of that for you here, girl. I think you're right. I'm definitely putting the is it the cart before the horse? Another old person saying, like,
there we go.
We'll get to Baalke because he's still there. I think you have to talk about the people that have left us with the Jags to talk about how we actually got here.
Right. Yeah. It's the yacht before the Winnebago is actually, I think, the podcast version of what we wanted to say there. I do think we have to take it back a little bit further. And I really think that Dave Caldwell's time with the Jags is unfortunately still something that they're feeling with this team. So just to set it up a little bit, they're 2-10 right now. Jags have the number 1 pick in the 2025 NFL draft. If the draft were to end today, they would be the team picking at the very top. With Trevor Lawrence going on IR now, first it looked like, okay, maybe it was from the concussion with the Azeez Al-Shaair hit. Now it looks like he's scheduled to have shoulder surgery on the AC joint. That's not his throwing shoulder, by the way. Just wanted to make sure that was very clear. He's done for the season, but it makes sense, right? They're not really playing for anything at this point. And in fact, they are playing for something, and it is that number 1 overall pick. So it's kind of that quiet quitting, that like quiet tanking kind of a thing that you're not allowed to do in the NFL. But it's like, oh, Trevor's hurt. We're going to put him on IR. Yeah. And let Mac Jones be a flamethrower out there and just throw the ball everywhere.
Tommy DeVito's the poster boy of no, that's not quiet quitting.
Exactly.
That's walking out of the office and yelling, "Go fuck yourself." I quit.
To the fan base, or they're trying to put together the best team that they possibly can. So for the Jags, the reason why I wanted to make sure that we did this episode right is because it's been tough for fans of this team. Jags have been bad for a while now. Since 2007, the Jags have 189 losses, which are the most in the NFL. They went 11-5 that 2007 season with Jack Del Rio. And really since then, it's been bad. Since then, they've only had 1 double-digit winning season. And it was that 2017 year with Doug Marrone as the head coach, where they went on that magical run that ended in the AFC Championship. Should have gotten them to the Super Bowl because Miles Jack wasn't down. I see you, Jags fans. I believe you. I'm right there with you. So it just has not been good for this team for a while. Losing, rebuilding, it unfortunately feels like it is just a part of who the Jacksonville Jaguars are. And what we're going to try to do on today's podcast is stop that, or at least give you a plan to where, okay, maybe we can get to that point. You talked about Trent Baalke, maybe having him out, and it seems like Doug Peterson is certainly a dead man walking. So maybe you get to change a lot of things within that organization. But before we get to Baalke, so I want to shout this out. Brett Coleman tweeted this out, friend of the show. And he pointed out how the 2020 draft set the Jags back a lot. And I agree with him. That draft was terrible. Then you had the Urban Meyer year. I'll get to the draft a little bit more in a second, but then you had the Urban Meyer year where you go 3-14, and it was just the biggest clown show that was possible for this organization. You thought you had it all figured out, and you thought that this was going to be, wow, a dynasty that you were setting up, and it was anything but. Then it felt like they hit the jackpot with Doug Peterson, right? Former Super Bowl winning coach, former quarterback guru. He becomes available, and it's 9-8 in the first season. All right, that's a great first season. Make the playoffs. All right, 9-8 the second season. All right, disappointing how it ended there with them. I made sure to get the years right this time. Sorry, Chicago Bears fans. I know you yelled at me for that last time. That's on me. But now they're sitting here even worse. Now they're 2-10. Now Doug Peterson, it looks like he's out. Connor, what'd you think about just that timeline of, I think, really just Urban Meyer and Doug Peterson? Because I thought this was going to be what set this franchise up for years. To me, it felt like the Urban Meyer was a blessing in disguise because Doug Peterson was available and they were going to get a fantastic head coach, somebody who led the Eagles to the promised land. Now you have Trevor Lawrence. That same thing was going to happen in Jacksonville, and it just straight up has not happened, man.
Well, I think the larger point or the larger outlook of it to me, besides the failure of it, is that this franchise, for all their shortcomings, has an owner that cares and will spend money and will go the extra lengths to try things, rather than just saying, who's the next coordinator up, and we'll give them whatever. Like, to put in perspective for people, I know coaching deals aren't public, but when you hire a first-time head coach that's a coordinator, it's usually a much more reasonable deal than, for example, the rumor with Urban Meyer's contract was that it was a 5-year deal worth between $10 and $12 million a year. That's like mega money.
Right.
So this is an owner that he goes the extra length to try to set this team up for success. They invest heavily in, analytics and their facilities, I feel like, and they spend in free agency. They give their personnel department. Cash and cap is very different in the NFL. And I mean, we talked about this with the Bengals a little bit. Cap space and actually having the cash to go get players, the way you structure the contracts, paying out signing bonuses, like that, you need an owner that wants to spend to do that. And while on paper, it looks like a lot of the owners around the league do spend, it is different having somebody that their front office will come to them and they will basically give them the green light and trust them and sign the checks. It's not that easy in the NFL to do that. Not all owners in the NFL do that. And I think this is a situation where this owner does in Shad Khan, who it just hasn't worked. And it's disappointing because I don't think people were insanely critical at the time of the Urban Meyer idea. I don't think people were insanely critical of hiring Doug Peterson, because both of them, Urban at the college level and Doug at the NFL level, had championship success. And you can't just kill a move all the time when somebody's had championship success that recently or on their resume. But for a variety of reasons, it didn't work. There are personnel problems with this team, but coaching has been one of the many problems. And it's a shame because it felt like when they got Trevor Lawrence that this division I thought was going to become Jacksonville's for a long time to come. And not that they'd go unchallenged for it, Trevor, but you could see for 10 years, like the Jags could rip off 6 or 7 division titles because they got this guy. And we are nowhere close to that. It's unfathomable. And when they went 9-8 that first year and got into the playoffs and won a playoff game, like I that is what I thought. I thought the Jags were certainly well on their way. Not that it was going to be perfect, not that it was going to be easy, but I felt we were going to talk about this team as one of the dominant teams in the division and even in the conference moving forward. And you're right. They go 9-8 the next year. It's a disappointing end of the season. They don't make the playoffs. 2-10 this year, dude. They are 3-15 going back to week 13 of last year. It's crazy. That's, oh my gosh, man. I mean, I didn't think that was possible under Doug Peterson. I really didn't. I really did not. And also, because I've been just pulling up all their draft history. Yeah, we'll get into that. We'll jump in. Yeah. I don't want to get into the specifics, but just, they could potentially be picking number 1 this year for the 3rd time since 2021. That feels almost impossible to do. Number 1. Especially if the same GM is making the pick. Well, that's good. We're going to open that combo. You tell me when. You say when. To quote Tombstone. And because, my God, it's just... Yeah, that part of it is despicable. So Dave Caldwell was the general manager for the Jacksonville Jaguars before they had Trent Baalke. They hired Trent Baalke in 2021. And so I do want to look at some of the draft classes that led us up to that point. You have that 2017 season where they make a deep run in the playoffs. And so unfortunately for them, the 2018 NFL draft was pretty stacked. I mean, this was a really good draft class. This is the Baker Mayfield, Saquon Barkley, Bradley Chubb, Quentin Nelson, Denzel Ward, Josh Allen, Minka Fitzpatrick, Vita Vea, Derwin James, Jair Alexander, Frank Ragnow, Colton Miller, like Mike McGlinchey was in this draft class. Roquan Smith's in this draft class, if I forgot to mention him. Sam Darnold, obviously a legend now, never wrong, just early. This was such a good first round, and the Jags just happened to make a deep playoff run. So they didn't get to pick high in the 2018 NFL draft. And then the year later, that was a disappointment in 2019 because they went 5-11 that season in 2018. So then the 2019 NFL draft, they get Josh Hines Allen in the top 10, which is like, okay, that's good, objectively a good pick. I liked the Juwan Taylor pick. I think people look at this 2019 class for Jacksonville, and there's some Jacksonville fans, you tell me, I feel like there's some sour feelings over Juwan Taylor, but Juwan Taylor was at least serviceable for you. And then obviously he goes to the Kansas City Chiefs. I know he's committed a lot of penalties, and that's kind of his reputation, but wins a Super Bowl with the Kansas City Chiefs. But Josh Allen in the first round, Juwan Taylor in the second,
Josh Oliver, who, okay, he's doing it for another team, but like
that's the problem, though.
Is a decent tight end. And then Quincy Williams, who
they cut and became an all-pro with the Jets. Not Pro Bowler, all-pro.
And then in that 6th round, they got Gardner Minshew. So it's like, okay, Caldwell kind of nailed the 2019 NFL draft. I don't know if I'm going to get yelled at or not for that, but he kind of nailed it. Those guys just didn't really pan out for them.
Right.
Minshew starts that next year. They get a top 10 pick again. And then this is where things, I think, really just start to go downhill for them. And
it's a disaster class.
I think this draft, I agree with Brett Coleman when he tweeted this out. This draft set them back and is still setting them back right now. The 2020 draft for the Jacksonville Jaguars was CJ Henderson, who was traded to Carolina like a year and a half later. Like
for
barely even
much.
I mean, the character evaluation of CJ Henderson and his fit with Jacksonville, like they completely blew that. Now, I mean, obviously, he hasn't exactly been a superstar, number 9 overall caliber corner, anyways. But for that to end that quickly and you not get much out of him, terrible. Kayvon Chaisson didn't work out for you. Laviska Shenault in the 2nd, bad. Davon Hamilton still on the team, but I mean, not really an impact defensive tackle, especially this season. Ben Bartz, Josiah Scott, Shaq Quarterman, Daniel Thomas, Colin Johnson. Like, there's no contribution in this draft for Jacksonville. There was like nothing that they could really hang their hat on with this group. I know Hamilton's
players
still there, but that was tough for them. Bart started a little bit for them, but I'm just kind of looking at his starts now. But man, to me, that was the draft that completely set them back, because for you to whiff as hard as they did there, and then for you to change general managers the year after, and all of a sudden now we're in a situation where it's a new coaching staff, it's a new general manager. Now, not only are these guys not good, we probably want to move on from a handful of them anyways because we want to get our guys into the building. It completely killed, in my opinion, what was a healthy next man up type of a thing for Jacksonville. And they've been in this cycle of trying to overspend in free agency, or at least they did the couple of years after that, where they're trying to mitigate some major draft misses with free agents that they're bringing in. And you never really improve the way that you need to. They just have not built this roster as healthy as they have needed to. Like, they signed Shaq Griffin the next year in free agency because they had to make up for it because CJ Henderson was so bad and he wanted out. Like, you're just spending free agent money at that point to mitigate a loss. You're not spending free agent money to make your team better. So those moves, I think, totally set them back in a lot of ways because the health and the depth and the core of the team was all of a sudden gone, especially with all of the changes to the regime. So that 2020 draft, I think, has bled into a lot of the roster issues that they have had. I like the 2021 draft. Like, I like Baalke's first draft. I'm not going to sit here and like give him all sorts of credit for picking Trevor Lawrence. I mean, that was the obvious one, but like, Trevor Etienne's been a good back for you when he's been healthy. Tyson Campbell's a really good football player. I like Walker Little. I think Walker Little is fine. They give him the extension, but I think Walker Little is fine. Andre Sisco has developed into a really nice safety for you. So you kind of hit on those 5 picks. That's good. That's a really nice draft in 2021. 2022, you know, you kind of got the nightmares of picking Trayvon Walker over Aiden Hutchinson. I like Devin Lloyd.
We have to stop there.
Okay, go ahead.
I mean, that's ridiculous. It is outthinking the room. Outthinking the room.
No, 100%. 100%.
It's utterly ridiculous. And it got, in my opinion, got the biggest pass of all time. I just still to this day, I sit here and go, how did everybody was like, well, he's big, he's strong, he's fast. And I'm not saying Trayvon Walker's a bad player. That's not what I'm saying.
Hey, he's got 8 sacks this year.
8.5. Don't shortchange him. But it is.
Sorry. 8.5.
It is crazy in that light. I'm trying to look up. So that was the 2022 draft, 2021. I want to make sure I have this right. 2021.
Yeah, that was the 21 draft.
I want to see the consensus board.
Walker was the 2022 draft. Which draft are you talking about?
Trayvon Walker.
2022.
Why? Yes, 2022. I could read. Clearly not. I want to see the consensus board on that because I'm just curious where everybody landed.
He was late, right? Like Walker was a late rise for people.
He was. I remember Dane Brugler from the jump was on it, that he was going to go way earlier than anyone was anticipating.
Yes.
Everybody kind of batted an eye.
Right. And Dane's obviously got really good sources in the league. Yes. And I think Jeremiah followed suit with that. And I don't remember if Kuiper
actually surprised by this. So on a Reef's consensus board that year, he does the forecasters and the evaluators. And the forecasters had Trayvon Walker 7th. That's not a surprise. There was a lot of buzz building.
Where'd you have him? Do you have your board up?
I'll pull it up in just a sec. I need to look. And the evaluators, though, had him 8th. I thought it would have been outside the, like just outside the top 10. But it was definitely it was just a surprise, all things considered.
Yeah, I would have thought that it would have been a little bit lower. Where's mine? Where did I have Trayvon Walker? I had Trayvon Walker 15th.
We're going to be really close on this.
I had him as edge 4 in the class, behind Tibbs, Hutch.
I had him 20th.
The Chipotle man himself, George Karlaftis.
Oh my God, the cart of Chipotle of
the
white rice and steak on a forklift. Now, admittedly, Walker's been better than a couple players I had ahead of him. So I was probably 20 was probably a hair too low, but I didn't really have to do the full scope and look back.
I had Jermaine Johnson ahead of him too, actually.
Me too. And Jermaine, I know he tore his Achilles this year, but I think Jermaine was a way better player than him last year.
Yeah. No, it's true.
I'm sure there's some Jags fans that'll push back. Like Walker, he hasn't been a bad player. That's not the point.
No. It was just very really hard
as the number 1 overall pick
to watch Hutchinson do what he's doing. Right? Like that's what really makes it so difficult.
He's a borderline franchise player for the Lions.
Right.
Or maybe not borderline. I mean, when you think of their defense, you think of Aiden Hutchinson, and they are super.
Oh wait, yeah. I was sleepwalking as I was reading something. He's 1,000% a franchise cornerstone for the Lions.
Yes.
Yeah. You are building the entire defense around Aiden Hutchinson at this point,
right?
For how good he was playing, but
yeah, I don't want it to seem like Trayvon Walker sucks, because I think that's a bad narrative, and that but it's the overall point. It just felt like outthinking the room a little bit.
Can I go back to, there were other layers of that 2020 draft outside of just the picks that they missed. So also, it was a disaster in 2020 because not only did it feel like they whiffed on basically every player that they drafted.
Yeah, 12 players.
They didn't go after, you think about the 2020 draft. This was the offensive line draft, which sucks because they had the number 9 overall pick. The only offensive tackle of Andrew Thomas, Tristan Wirfs, Mekhi Becton, Jedrick Wills, of those guys, Austin Jackson was also in the first round. Of those offensive tackles, the only one who had gone off the board was Andrew Thomas at that point. So you don't want to be too revisionist history about it, because Jedrick Wills and Mekhi Becton were the next 2 guys who were off the board. But Tristan Wirfs was there as well. And the reason why they would have never been interested in Tristan Wirfs is because they just drafted Juwan Taylor the year before, and they already had Cam Robinson on the left side. So it's kind of bad luck, because if you don't draft Juwan Taylor, who again, I don't think Juwan was terrible. Did he become the player that they needed him to be? No. But if you don't draft Juwan, guess who they're drafting at number 9 overall in 2020? They're drafting Tristan Wirfs, because Wirfs played the right side of the offensive line. So it would have been the easy transition for them, I think. So I think sometimes the hindsight game of the draft of who you would rather pick is a brutal one, and sometimes it's a little too unfair, but I think that was realistic there. They also didn't draft any of the receivers in 2020. This was the Jerry Jeudy, Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb. I mean, Henry Ruggs was obviously in this draft class as well, but Brandon Ayuk was in the first round of this draft. T. Higgins was in this draft. There were so many great receivers that they didn't go after either, because of the way that they felt the receiver room was set up. Let me look. At the beginning of April of that year in 2020, they had Marquise Lee, DJ Chark, and Dede Westbrook on the team as their wide receivers. They didn't opt for any of those wide receivers because they weren't seen as top 10 overall picks. It's just,
and they waited for
20 draft is so painful for Jacksonville, because it could have been so different for them from a team building perspective at this point.
It put Baalke in a really tough place to start. That's a fair point.
Yes.
When you miss on
And I think he did well in 2021.
A 12-player class. He did. And once again, I want to reiterate, Trayvon Walker is a good player, but he was the number 1 overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to get cute or cheeky when you have inherited a situation that you can't afford that, right? I often think of that with Joe Douglas, and they're a very interesting combo because I believe Baalke right now is 30-65 since he's been GM, which is very similar to Douglas's record when he got fired. Taking Becton over Wirfs is the perfect example of getting cute. Becton could always be a Hall of Fame player because of that build and size, but the floor was lower. Walker's is probably a different combo, although Walker's size and athleticism gave him a really good floor, specifically against the run. But Hutchinson's overall pass rush ability right away was why most people had him over there. So, it doesn't mean Walker's a bad player. He's a good player. But the point is, Baalke could never afford to get cute with certain picks because of what he inherited, and that kind of bit him. And he had a really good 2021 draft. When you look at 2022, it's not like it's a disaster, but then it put him in a spot where in 2023 and 2024, your chances, like your ability or really missed opportunities are going to cost you twice as more than anyone else. And that's where this thing kind of spins out of control. Not to mention the coaching is a massive problem.
Right. Which again, like I thought the coaching was going to make up for a lot of this stuff. I mean, we've seen so many times, and we even talked about it on last week's show. Like, if you have a great coach, they can elevate the floor of a team so well. They get the most out of all of their players. Now, I do, like we do on this podcast, if we're going to criticize, we're going to make sure that we do it fairly and appropriately.
Absolutely.
It's not like Aiden Hutchinson was this, like, no doubt about it, 100%. Like, there were no flaws to him. When you look at Aiden Hutchinson, unbelievably productive at Michigan. Obviously, he goes number 2 overall for a reason. He kills the combine with the athletic test. But the worries with Aiden Hutchinson were 11th percentile wingspan, 7th percentile arm length. And when you look at who Trent Baalke is and the players that he has prioritized as a general manager, both in San Francisco and with Jacksonville, it makes sense why he would not take that type of a player. He does not like drafting players, specifically with premium picks, where they are at, like, measurably limited at all whatsoever.
A little more old school. Thresholds.
He has thresholds, but he does not deviate from that. And this was an instance where, okay, you have a general manager who maybe has an eye for great athletes with great build for an NFL player, but he did that to the nth degree here. And he ended up picking a prospect who was too much of a project over Aiden Hutchinson, who has obviously solidified himself as one of the best pass rushers in the game. Now, to be fair to him as well, it felt like they had a little bit of time, right? Trevor Lawrence was on his was in the second year of his rookie deal. You were signing a new head coach. It felt like the Jags had a little bit of time. So even if Trayvon Walker was going to take a little bit of time, they felt like they were, in the right position to draft a player like that. And unfortunately, they're correct because they're still there. So They still got time for him to develop, but now you're getting towards the end of that rookie contract. And, we'll kind of dig into the roster a little bit more once we get to that point. But yeah, I think that this is the point of the show now where we talk about the general manager situation. If you have more thoughts on Baalke, it seems like he's staying. The fact that they gave Walker Little that extension, when the Jags don't really do that at all, like it's not Baalke's MO to do extensions in season. For them to do that makes me feel like he is still going to be part of this organization. And we've got, a month left to go and no Trevor Lawrence. Like, man, the vibes could get way worse in Jacksonville. Maybe they do move on, but I'm not convinced, man. It's not a break the bank type of an extension with Walker Little. So even if they fired him at the end of the season, it's not like we'd look back on this and be like, what do you do with the Walker Little extension?
How can you put this on a new GM? Right.
Yeah. But
so the deal's fine.
It's not that big of a deal. And it's a starting caliber offensive tackle. So that's never really a bad decision anyway. I don't want to say it's a guarantee that he's back, but it does kind of feel like he is going to be back. But you tell me, how do you feel about this with him? Do you think he's out for sure?
So my problem with this is I don't want to do the 1 foot in, 1 foot out thing where Baalke stays, but you're hiring a new coach.
And then Baalke's on the hot seat.
And then Baalke's on the hot seat. Here's the problem, because you could argue over, bad picks and good picks, right? And that what we know, he inherited a mess. What we know, his drafting in 2021 was good. His drafting in 2022, little hot and cold. Like we said, Trevor Walker, good player, but the Aiden Hutchinson, it's a weird number 1 overall pick. That was, not the right move. Luke Fortner, and this isn't a hindsight thing. He takes Luke Fortner to be their interior offensive lineman, center or guard, wherever you want to play him. He was just mostly a center prospect coming out, 65th overall. This isn't a hindsight thing. Luke Fortner was 116 on the consensus board.
Yeah.
And he's been a bad pick for them. Really bad pick for them. So once again, if you wanted to get into good picks, bad picks, I think Brian Thomas Jr. is a really, really good pick.
Yep.
We can go through that for days, but he hasn't been good enough that you sit there and go, Baalke's not the problem. We need a coach. I don't feel that way. I feel like he might be part of the problem. And if that's the case, and we didn't even get into any of the pro side things they've done, if that's the case, why not just start clean on both ends with a GM and a head coach rather than, we're going to hire a head coach, but like you're working with Trent Baalke. Not every head coach candidate, and Jacksonville will be an attractive job. They have a good owner that spends money. They have Trevor Lawrence, who people in the NFL still really like. And it's not the same media market that going to Chicago or going to the Jets or going to places like that is, where a million people are down your back. Like, why are you starting off 1-3? You should be fired. It's not like that right now. But Trent Baalke there could be a factor that deters some candidates, not all candidates, but some candidates.
Yeah, I think the biggest issue is Baalke's style just feels very in his lane. And if you gel with it, then maybe you could put together a hell of a roster. Like, obviously they were able to do that in San Francisco. They were able to put together incredible teams with him and Jim Harbaugh because, they were seeing eye to eye. But if you don't have a head coach that sees eye to eye with you, I thought Peterson would with Baalke, but it obviously I don't think that has been the case. Do you alienate your head coach immediately? Like, does the general manager just think, okay, well, these are the types of players that I want to draft? And the head coach goes, well, these are the types of players that I want to draft. And to me, he's just very much more, I don't want to say set in his ways because that sounds too stubborn, but he has his way of doing things. And I do think that it's more in his lane than it is, hey, I've got a wider scope on the types of players that I could draft and all that kinds of stuff. So to me, the biggest, I think, criticism of keeping him is you're now pigeonholing like who you can hire as head coach.
That's the problem. Well, let me ask you this. Trent Baalke, right? 60 years old, started his scouting career in 1998 under Bill Parcells with the New York Jets. That tells you everything you need to know about his thresholds, old school, all that stuff.
Yeah.
Doug Peterson. What would we classify Doug as? More of an old school coach, more of an old school kind of football guy who's been around, played in the league, coached in the league.
Right.
When teams fire a coach, Trevor, what do they often do? They often get the guy that is most different from the guy they just fired, whether it's players coach to drill sergeant, whether it's a CEO, defensive guy to offensive mastermind, whatever it may be. If you're hiring a new coach after letting Doug Peterson go, what kind of coach do we think they're hiring? Probably a new, forward-thinking, new era NFL guy, most likely going to be somebody they try to staple to Trevor Lawrence's hip. I know that was the thought with Doug, but still, it's an assumption, or more of a hypothesis. I don't think that person will most likely blend with Baalke, is my take.
I do agree. I do. I don't know who they're going to get. Like, if we're bringing head coaching candidates into the mix here, the three names that I really like for Jacksonville, I'd be curious if you have a list yourself, but the three names that I like the most, Ben Johnson is the obvious one that's on every single list. Obviously, if you can get Ben Johnson, great, but him coming to Jacksonville, I'm not so sure about that. If he has the power of like picking the GM as well, maybe that's enticing to him, but
well, I have a plan for that, but go on.
Ben Johnson is sort of a candidate that is there, but Clint Kubiak's another one. Like, he is one of these young, new age offensive coordinators who I think has been fantastic with what he has been given to work with a tumultuous situation with the New Orleans Saints, who I think that he would be good with the Jags. And I think he would be good with Trevor Lawrence. Now, is he the head coach type? That's to be determined. I'm not in head coaching interviews with him or anything like that. But then the other one is the combination of, and, as a Bucs fan, I certainly hope that this doesn't happen, but you go with John Spytek, the assistant general manager for Jason Light, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and you go get Liam Cohen as well. So Liam Cohen becomes the head coach. John Spytek becomes the general manager. And those are two guys who are in Tampa Bay right now. And yeah, I understand that Liam Cohen's only been there a year, but I got to think that him and Spytek have somewhat of a relationship now. And, if you come into Tampa Bay, they're not just hiring people who are zigging when they're zagging. Tampa Bay is not about hiring guys who do not fit exactly what their culture and organization are all about. So if Liam Cohen's here and he's offensive coordinator in Tampa, then I got to think that from the top down, he's gelling with the vibes, the mentality, the things that they look for, the culture they try to set up, all that kinds of stuff. So that's a combination that I would take to Jacksonville if you can get those two guys out of Tampa Bay. I don't know if that's the case, because if Tampa feels like they're going to lose Liam Cohen, they might just make him head coach. And, we'll see if that ends up happening. But to me, that's a pairing that I really like for Jacksonville if we're talking about hypotheticals here.
I do too. Me and you are thinking the same pathway here, where we're thinking of some pairings, which is, in my opinion, a big selling point. If I was in front of Jacksonville's entire ownership group and leadership group, I would be pitching to them or consulting to them that this is the time to get the right pairing together and really build it up that way. You think of Dan Campbell with Brad Holmes, and on these lists and examples go, where pairings to me, you brought up Ben Johnson. I would want to bring Ray Agnew over with him from Detroit, who has a reputation of a guy that helped build the Lions in both sides of the ball in the trenches, offensive line and defensive line. That's where Ray Agnew's strengths are as a scout, and where he gets a really big time reputation around the NFL. And that would be great for Jacksonville. And they have pieces on the defensive line, but if you can really make this offensive line a strength in front of Trevor Lawrence, and you have Ben Johnson, and those guys have been together in Detroit, that would be my pairing with GM and head coach. My same thing, and this is a little bit more outside the box, or a little bit more, because everybody would listen to that and be like, I want Ben Johnson with Trevor Lawrence. And sure, if you tell me Ray Agnew can scout, then get him in here. Mm-hmm. But, if they can't lure that kind of package, why not bring over Pete Carroll for a short-term time with Nolan Teasley? He's the assistant GM of Seattle, another guy with a big-time reputation. So Nolan Teasley, big-time scouting reputation, who's going to be a GM in this league very soon and will have his choice of a few jobs, I think, shortly. So Pete brings over Teasley as the GM, but Pete hires an offensive coordinator of the likes of a Clint Kubiak, who's going to probably be, moving on as the Saints bring in a new staff, or a Brian Dable, an accomplished offensive coordinator. Maybe Mike McDaniel gets let go by the Dolphins. I think Pete builds the infrastructure and culture that a top-flight offensive coordinator will want to go there because, one, I believe in Trevor Lawrence. Two, I think Pete Carroll will make this a professional program that after a year or two of success, I will get head coaching interviews elsewhere. You have that kind of hiring power if you're a Pete Carroll. I know people will think it's crazy because Pete would be the oldest coach in the NFL, but the Jaguars need, and yeah, but be clear, a younger guy like Ben Johnson would be my number one with Agnew. But if you can't go that route, you can get this culture to be a winning program again under Pete Carroll, who has hiring power both at GM and both on the offensive side of the ball.
I love the Agnew Ben Johnson pairing. I think
that's the dream for this team.
That, when we've had the Ben Johnson conversation, it's always been about, well, does Ben Johnson actually want the job? Because he hasn't before in multiple stops, or at least when he's gotten head coaching interviews. I think something that would be very alluring for him is knowing who the general manager is going to be, and not necessarily saying he's the one hiring the general manager, because I always think that's a weird dynamic when that happens, when you're hiring your boss. But to bring those guys over from Detroit at the same time, people might look at Jacksonville and might be like, why in the hell would Ben Johnson go to Jacksonville? That's why you would do it. It's the same conversation of what we were talking about with the Bears, why he would go to the Chicago Bears. It's Caleb Williams. You have the franchise quarterback in place. For Jacksonville, you have Trevor Lawrence. And then you're going to have a general manager that you're familiar working with, that you've been in that organization with them for a while. And to me, that also makes a ton of sense. As shocking as it might be, Jacksonville feels like one of the more plausible Ben Johnson landing spots.
I agree.
If they can get somebody who is an assistant general manager with the Lions who's ready to become a general manager to go with him, because that would give him that sort of security and he wouldn't have to worry about, because I have a hard time believing that if Trent Baalke's there, Ben Johnson's going to be interested at all. Why would you? We just set it up. You're going to be working for a general manager who's on the hot seat, who you might not even see eye to eye with, and then you got to draft a full draft. You got to go through free agency with him in 2 months. I don't know, man. Sounds pretty unrealistic if you want to shoot for the stars and get a Ben Johnson type. But
I agree. That's the whole point of the pairings conversation and why it's probably time to move on. Whether you've liked Baalke's drafts, whether you've been indifferent to the entire sample size. And, there are pieces there for a Ben Johnson on offense. You said Trevor Lawrence. They have Brian Thomas Jr., who could be a true field stretcher and overall just great player. And the impact that receiver on the field has on your run game and lightning boxes, and obviously Tank Bigsby and Etienne, and even a younger guy in the slot, the way Ben Johnson has maximized Amon-Ra St. Brown, why not get the most out of Parker Washington, who, looks like, and I know it's a really small sample size this year, but he could be a starting slot in this league and be used the same way. So there are pieces there that Ben Johnson's not walking into an empty room and going, how the hell am I going to run anything that I've run in Detroit here? No. So I think I personally, and I agree with you, I think this is an attractive job to him, especially, or more importantly, if he has influence that there's a comfort level with who's the GM.
Thinking about pairings too. I'm just thinking a little bit more about this. Brian Gaine was the general manager for the Texans
for like 3 days
to 2019. Yeah.
One of the strangest runs ever.
And it just, things did not go well with him and Bill O'Brien. And Bill O'Brien
was that when the pastor had some control too?
Oh yeah. What was his name? No, I thought that was after.
It might have been after. Jack Easterby. All-time NFL villain. All-time NFL villain. No, he absolutely Game of Thrones Brian Gaine.
That was Brian Gaine.
Because he became Texans executive VP of team development in 2019.
Man, do I love a long bullshit executive title.
No, Jack Easterby has the greatest Wikipedia career history of all time. You want to put your seatbelt on and listen to this one?
Okay, yeah, let's do it.
Career history as an executive. Jacksonville Jaguars 2004, operations intern. I love the word operations in the corporate world.
Well, they could get Easterby then. He'd come home.
Right, you get coming home video.
A little homecoming.
South Carolina, character coach for 5 years. 5 years.
Was it under Spurrier? Who was it under?
2005 to 2010. Wouldn't that be?
I think that'd be, I think that would be Spurrier.
Kansas City Chiefs. Is it pronounced Chaplain? I definitely.
Well, no, just a Chaplain. But if you
Chaplain.
But if you want to call it a Chaplain, that's
for
hilarious.
This exercise. I really do. The Chaplain. It makes it sound like a fake job when he was just the chaplain. So
he said Chaplain.
It gets better. You think that one's good?
All right.
New England Patriots, character coach and team development.
The secret to Tom Brady's success, right there.
He absolutely kept the dynasty going.
Yeah.
Yeah, very odd, but that's basically the guy that.
But then was Bill O'Brien there with the Patriots? Like, is that why the coup happened?
I think so.
For him to overthrow Gaine, and this guy with Bill O'Brien as the head coach, then this guy just becomes like the de facto GM or decision maker.
It does feel that way. This will be a Netflix doc. Yeah, no, it says on the Wikipedia, which never lies. Nobody could even access that.
Right.
Easterby, along with coach and general manager Bill O'Brien, worked to overhaul the roster. With Easterby, the preacher, handling the contract negotiation.
The Chaplain.
Oh, that's good. That is the good stuff.
So, all right. Justice for Brian Gaine.
Didn't expect that.
No, did not expect to go on that tangent.
Yeah, Brian Gaine got screwed.
So the reason why I'm bringing him up, Joe Brady.
Oh, they're talking about pairings.
Joe Brady OC, Brian Gain, assistant general manager for the Buffalo Bills, has been for the last couple of years. He's been with the Buffalo Bills organization for a couple of years before that. So I'm saying pairings.
That's the theme to me with the Jaguar. Like when I was planning for the show, that was my main theme with this organization. Not a Jack Easterby sidebar, but I'm glad we got there.
No, that was great. Always good to get a Jack Easterby sidebar in here. I couldn't even remember his name, so I'm glad that I'm glad that you brought this back up. There's probably any Houston Texans fan who's listening to this show, just a little bit, behind enemy lines kind of a thing for the AFC South is probably just screaming inside the fact that we brought up his name.
Yeah, so how dare you?
So, all right, to just wrap that part of the segment up before we move on, because we're going to talk about free agency, we're going to talk about the roster, and then we're going to give you a mock draft. You were talking about Agnew and Ben Johnson as a potential pairing from Detroit to come over as GM and head coach. I talked about Liam Cohen and John Spytek to do that from Tampa Bay, and then also Brian Gain and Joe Brady to be able to do the same thing for the Buffalo Bills. I like all of those angles. If I'm going to be honest with you, the Ben Johnson one is my favorite. And I know people watching the show might be like, stop suggesting Ben Johnson. This one actually makes sense. Like this is the one that I like the most when it comes to a Ben Johnson pairing. And of course, selfishly, it also means that I'm not voluntarily taking John Spytek and Liam Cohen and taking them out of Tampa Bay. But I also, to be fair with you guys, think that would be a good pairing. But we'd love to hear what you guys think about your head coach and general manager candidates for the Jacksonville Jaguars. All right, before we get into the roster and free agency, talk about some salary cap. Speaking of salary, finances, there's some things the school doesn't teach you, like how to handle the financial world appropriately, right? Like how to have a plan, make a successful future. That includes for your kids. Fabric makes it easy to set up an investment account for your child that grows with them and helps prepare them for a great financial future. Fabric by Gerber Life was designed by parents for parents to make it easy to plan for and manage your family's financial path with a kid's UGMA account. That's what it's called. UGMA account from Fabric. You can start investing in your child's future today. The UGMA account, it allows you to invest on your child's behalf while they cannot invest because they're minors, and it gives those investments extra time to grow as they grow. Funds can be used for nearly anything. When they're younger, tuition, books, summer camp, after-school activities, all that good stuff. And then when they're young adults, maybe a first car, first house, even start a business, anything. It's a great investment account that, again, allows your kids to have something that grows a little bit extra as they are growing. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help their family. Start investing in your child's future today at meetfabric.com/stock exchange. That's meetfabric.com/stock exchange. MEET fabric.com/stock exchange. MEAT Fabric is an award that we're going to give out to Trent Baalke's former number 1 overall picks when we get to the end of the year. Actually, he could honestly just have Meet Fabric, and it's just like his big board there. That could honestly be a great descriptor of Trent Baalke's big boards. This is a paid promotion by the Fabric UGMA product, not for investment advisory services. Portfolios are managed by Fort Washington Investment Advisors Incorporated. Custodial services provided by Apex Clearing Corporation. All investing is subject to risk. Terms apply. Learn more at Meet Fabric, MEET fabric.com. All right, roster.
Yep.
As we do, introing the roster, we're going to talk about key players. Now, once again, I must remind people, this isn't, okay, we're talking about, these are the only good players on the team. These are the key pieces that we have on both sides of the ball. Starting with offense, Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr., and I'm going to say Anton Harrison and Walker Little. And I know I'm going to get some pushback for that, but Walker Little just signed the extension. I think Anton Harrison is getting better. And I do think, as somebody who was high on Anton Harrison when he was coming out of Oklahoma, I think he can develop into a good offensive tackle in the NFL. So I would like to move forward with your key pieces as Trevor Lawrence, Travis Etienne, Brian Thomas Jr., Walker Little, and Anton Harrison. That's what I got. Do you have any of the receivers in there? Do you have Evan Ingram in there? Do you have anybody else on there when it comes to key pieces?
I think Brian Thomas Jr. is the main one. Like I said, I'm hopeful for Parker Washington in the slot. And Evan Ingram's a weird one, right? Because there's such a comfort level with him and Trevor Lawrence, but he's really a bigger wide receiver in terms of usage. And I think going back to like if Ben Johnson and Agnew came in or any of the pairings, I think a focal point of this team would be to be a bigger, tougher team in the trenches that can just run the heck out of the football as well. And that would come into play of, you know, they have to figure out if, you know, Walker Little and Anton Harrison can be a part of that. That's the tough part.
So receiver, you know, they have Christian Kirk as well. He's out for the season.
Yeah, they were going to trade him, but he got hurt.
His contract's huge, unfortunately.
But very cuttable, movable.
I don't think it is.
No?
Is it?
I thought it is.
I don't think it is.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those situations where like they probably will cut him and they'll just eat the dead money. Because you at the same time, you're going to save 11 mil in cap savings, and that's a pre-June one.
Whoa, really?
Yeah, if you want to spread the money out as a post-June, you're going to save $16.5 million next year. They're going to cut Christian Kirk. I don't think will be on this team next year.
Wow, I guess I didn't realize that. I saw the big number amount, and I thought that he was going to.
Yeah, the dead money's not great, but it's not like
they have Gabe Davis too, and Gabe Davis I think is on the team for one more year because I don't think it makes sense to cut him. If I'm remembering that correctly.
That sounds right. I mean, Gabe is I'm pulling it up right now. If this search would ever work. But yeah, Christian Kirk, I thought they were going to move on from him at the trade deadline. They got hurt.
Yeah.
Gabe Davis, you're riding that out. There's you're in the red if you cut him. He's on this team next year for sure.
Yeah. But I don't think he's a key piece.
No.
And I wouldn't call Evan Ingram a key piece, honestly, because
No, I wouldn't either.
If you move on from Evan Ingram, post June 1, you save 15 mil. Pre-June 1, you save 6. So this
once again, spreading out the money.
I mean, you could keep Evan Ingram. I don't think that Evan Ingram is a bad player. But is he going to be worth it for you when you know that you're going to have trench needs?
It's maybe one more year, maybe. And then it's all void years.
Key defensive players. I've got Josh Hines-Allen, Trayvon Walker, has to be.
Yep.
Devin Lloyd, and then Tyson Campbell.
Yeah, Campbell's a really good player. It's a shame that he's been banged up.
Yeah. Those are my four that I have for the defensive side of things. Do you have any others?
I think that makes sense.
The only one that I'm sort of like on the fence on is Andre Sisco, but he's a free agent.
He'll probably get paid by somebody else.
Right.
Lloyd has had a really good third year, hasn't he?
I like Devin Lloyd. I was pretty high.
No, I like Devin Lloyd a lot as a prospect, and I thought he had a little bit of a rocky road as a rookie, but I feel like he's played really well since then. Yeah, that would be mine as well. I agree with you. Sisco feels like a guy that gets paid by somebody else.
And I like Sisco.
Yeah, he's a playmaker on the back end. I don't think he has
range. I liked him coming out of Syracuse. He was my dude.
Yeah, he's got range. He can take away the football. I know the interception numbers are down this year compared to previous years, but that's what happens when teams are just running out the clock on you.
Yeah, he's still a good football player.
He's good. But that's it for me.
Okay, so the big cap hits on this team going into next year. Christian Kirk's the big one, but you're saying you can kind of get out of that. Josh Hines-Allen's 15 mil on the cap. Trevor Lawrence is 17 mil on the cap. Gabe Davis, we talked about, can't really move him. He's 6. Brandon Sheriff has a void year.
Yeah, it is what it is.
I think he might retire. Hamilton's
always hurt.
Devon Hamilton's 10 mil. Can you move on from Devon Hamilton?
Do they? Well, what's the dead charge?
I don't know. Hold on. Let me look it up. Looking it up. Ooh. Devon Hamilton, if you cut him pre-June 1, let's see. You are in the red 1.1 million.
Ugh.
So not moving on from him then, because you're not really going to designate him as a post-June 1. Although you do save $7 million if that's the case. Yeah,
you only get 2 post-June 1, so we got to be careful here. Like Christian Kirk has to be 1, in my opinion.
Yeah. Because then you save the 16, right?
Man, Hamilton's. I'd like to get out of that deal. I don't think it's aging. I don't think it's aging.
Yeah,
great.
because if you do Evan Ingram as a post-June 1, then you save 15.
Yeah, this
so
is tough. They have some
15 and 16 with 2 players.
They have some bad deals on the books. I hate to say it, but
that almost doubles their free agency money. Because right now they have 34 mil in effective cap space for 2025. That is, I think, like 18th or 19th in the NFL.
Right.
So they don't have a lot to work with.
Spend a lot of money year after year.
Now they don't have a lot of free agents. I mentioned Andre Sisco is their biggest one. After that, it's Mac Jones, Jeremiah Ledbetter. Those are just guys that I know off the top of my head. Let's see, Dearness Johnson.
Right. Yeah. I mean, you already got
Luke
right
Farrell. Back. Yeah. I mean, Cole Van Landen. I mean, these are.
It's Cisco.
Yeah, I said Cisco at the top.
No, I'm saying like that's the only one that matters.
Oh, yeah. I'd bring Cisco back.
I would too.
I don't know what his number is going to be. I really don't. But I would bring Cisco back.
New GMs, though, typically, they come in. Well, we don't know if this team's going to have a new GM. If Trent Baalke stays, then Cisco will be back. It's his player.
Probably. I think he should be back regardless.
My take, though, on this team is that I'm not dying for a new GM to come in and just spend like they usually spend.
But the thing that could be enticing for a new general manager is, again, if you cut Christian Kirk and Evan Ingram, neither of them are your best receiver anyways. You still have Brian Thomas Jr., which you are building the team around. You still have Parker Washington, who's fine.
Who can replace
Christian
Kirk.
You still, Kirk is better than Parker Washington.
Yes, but he's a young player that I think is getting better.
I like him. I think his floor is fine. And then you have Gabe Davis, who has to be on the roster next year anyways. So in my opinion, and this is a really good tight end class. And you have an extra 3rd and a 4th round pick.
That's nice.
Especially with this tight end class. So in my opinion, I'm moving on from both of those guys. I'm moving on from Kirk, and I'm moving on from Evan Ingram. And I'm setting us up, and I'm giving us $60 million to work with when it comes to free agents. How do you feel about it?
I feel good, and I want to go out and get a corner.
Okay, so now we look at team needs. I think interior offensive line is a big-time team need.
Feels Brandon like Scherff every year.
Brandon Scherff could very well retire. Yep. And he's 32. He'll be 33 next season. Mitch Morse is the same way. Mitch Morse has one more year on his deal after this year, but he is also 32, 33. And he is, in the twilight of his career. You have Ezra Cleveland on one side, and then you have the two offensive tackles under contract, Anton Harrison, and then Walker Little just signed the extension. So I think that there's like a center and a guard spot, at least, that you need along the interior offensive line. I would love to go for a premium. I know people hate for us to keep bringing up Trey Smith. I don't think that they would be in the Trey Smith category for guard. I really don't. So you don't have to hear us talk about Trey Smith again here. But I think interior offensive line's a need. I think interior defensive line is a need.
It is. Devon Hamilton hasn't been good enough.
Devon Hamilton being your best interior defensive lineman is not great. Although yeah, I guess. I mean, they have Arik Armstead, right? I'm thinking about Arik Armstead as well. He is there. So I guess I would play him as the interior defensive lineman, who I like. Obviously, I think Arik Armstead's a really good player. You drafted Mason Smith. In theory, if Mason Smith worked out and you have Arik Armstead and Mason Smith, you're okay in interior defensive tackle, especially if Devon Hamilton can then be a rotational interior defensive lineman for you. But I still like the idea of defensive tackle being on the team needs list. So corner, interior offensive line, interior defensive line, and wide receiver to me. And tight end then if you're moving on from Evan Ingram. Does that sound about right?
That sounds right.
Okay. So what are we doing in free agency? Who are we going after?
I would really like to go get a corner for this team. Now, this is where
show me corners.
It gets a little tricky, right? Because the guys I like are approaching 30. Like DJ Reed has had a really good season. He will play, I believe, his age 29 season next year. DJ Reed's a good player. A guy that's had a tough year, and I think it's pretty fair why. I mean, I feel for Charvarius Ward, what he's dealing with. He's lost his 2-year-old daughter. I know he's been on and off the field. He's had a tough year on the field, understandably so. Mm-hmm. He will be a free agent after the year. That's a guy that I think is a big bounce back player. Like Charvarius Ward in this league is a big time corner. He's been dealing stuff that nobody could fathom with this year. And if you're putting any stock into his play on the field this year, that's not fair to me. So those are two corners that I'm looking at that are, they're getting towards 30, but I know they could play.
Yeah, I think I'd go after one of those two guys.
What about, but then we can look younger, Paulson Adebo. Is there a younger corner that you look at and say, okay,
I don't hate it. I'd rather make the big splash at corner if we can, though.
I agree, because then you have an identity.
What's Ronald Darby's contract?
It can't be anything crazy.
Because they have Darby, but where are we here with him? He is
Can't be anything crazy.
$5 million on the cap next year, and next year is his last year. He'll be 31. You could cut him and save $2.5 million if you wanted to. I don't think they have to, but I did want to shout out. I also want to shout because Montaric Brown's been okay. I wouldn't want to rely on him being a starter, but Jerry and Jones they have for the slot, and I wanted to make sure that I mentioned that.
Yeah, use the
I like Jerry
on
and
him.
Jones. I like Jerry and Jones. So you have Tyson Campbell, you have Jerry and Jones. You really just need one other outside corner, especially if you're bringing Cisco back. I actually don't know. How has Darnell Savage been for them? He's been a disappointment.
I feel like yes.
Darnell Savage. Ooh. Not have great PFF grades.
No, I noticed that. Consistently poor coverage grades.
Yeah, 2023 was his best season last year for Green Bay. And it looks like he has struggled this year. 52.2 coverage grade. Well, he's probably under contract for a while. I don't think he's somebody that you're moving on from, let's say.
It's a thinner market. Like, it's not.
Darnell Savage is under contract for the next 2 years after this, 2025 and 2026, and then has 3 void years. Yeah, he is not cuttable.
Okay.
Yeah, he's not cuttable. So he is on this team. So I like the idea of getting one of those two corners, Charvarius Ward or DJ Reed, honestly.
Veteran for this defense on the back end.
As my main focus.
Yeah,
yep.
I'm in on that for sure.
Okay. So we like that. And then
interior offensive line again. You want to go back to, or?
Yeah, I think so. Because I think they have enough bodies along the interior defensive line.
And you could draft one.
And obviously you could draft one as well. But, there's a handful of names here for interior defensive line. We've talked about Mike Pennell. We've talked about Bobby Brown. We've talked about Poona Ford. Shout out the Chargers guys who tweeted at us and were like, stop giving Poona Ford to every other team.
We have been doing that. We love him. He's one of the most underappreciated players in the NFL.
Yeah, he's a good player. Good player.
Is this a James Daniels team?
Could be a James Daniels team.
Right? I mean, was having a great year, and then he's out for the year.
Yeah. I don't hate James Daniels because he's got that center flexibility to him. I think all of his grades have been great when he has been a guard, but he might be able to play guard for you. And then if Mitch Morris plays another year, then if Mitch Morris leaves, then you might be able to get James Daniels to play center for you. And we could either draft a guard this year or draft a guard next year. And then you'd sort of be ahead of the curve a little bit. I don't hate that.
Yeah.
All right. So far we got DJ Reed and Charvarius Ward. We're bringing back Andre Cisco. We've signed James Daniels as well. Maybe you're probably bringing in another offensive lineman too.
What's a weird one that I would do, but I would take a flyer on him and see what he has left in the tank for this team, because I think it's a really good voice in the room for Trevor Lawrence and a young offensive line.
Okay,
this is a spot where I Zach Martin. Who I understand.
Ooh.
I understand. Zach Martin is having probably the weakest year of his Hall of Fame amazing career.
Yeah, and he's out for the year now.
That bar he set is so ridiculously high. You're telling me that Zach Martin at 34 next year?
You're telling me a shrimp fried this rice?
Can't give you.
I like it.
Like the Zeitler thought. Like, okay, maybe he's going to play 1 year here, but. Hey, it's Zach Martin.
I like it.
I like it a lot.
I think he'll retire if he's not a Cowboy.
Yeah, like physically, is it starting to fail him?
I think
how this year ended.
I think he'll retire if he's not
Cowboy for life.
Yeah.
I hope not. I hope Zach Martin tries to ride it out one more year.
Yeah.
But that's totally fair. I mean, this would be like a real dart throw signing. It's not the only move I'm making on the interior offensive line. It's a supplementary move.
We talked about Colton.
He could be the team Chaplain.
He could be the Chaplain. Yeah. He could be flying the Chaplain.
Next thing you know, you go from Chaplain to making draft picks and signing players to extensions.
Zach Martin just goes straight from playing, being on the field to just general manager. We talked about Coleman Shelton a little bit in the Fixing the Bears episode. Don't hate him, again, as an idea where it's like, hey, wherever you can upgrade the most, whether it's at guard or center. Now, you know what? Okay, here's what I would like to do. James Daniels I like because of the flexibility. Play guard or center for you. I also like the idea of taking a flyer on Tevin Jenkins. Because even though I don't
love thought process.
Even though I don't love the Bears, I wouldn't hate if the Bears brought him back. Like, because he's been a good player when he's healthy. But when we talked about in the last episode, we let him walk in our simulated offseason because he just hurt so much. So you want to give him that second contract. Jacksonville, depending on what his contract demands are, like what he's going to end up getting on the open market, you could bring him in and you could almost be like, okay, well, we've already got Ezra Cleveland. We've got James Daniel. We have Mitch Morris here. And if Tevin Jenkins just happens to be an absolute ass kicker and is a fully healthy season, good for us.
Right.
So I don't hate that idea either, as I'm sort of scrolling through the interior offensive linemen that might be available. I do like the Tevin Jenkins route as well. So
I think we came to the conclusion. We want one guy that is more of a sure-ish thing and one guy that's a dart throw flyer.
Yes.
I think that's fair.
And Josh Myers, maybe if you can't get James Daniel, he's got that same sort of flexibility to him. That center guard flexibility. Don't hate that idea. Austin Corbett,
anywhere else on this roster?
For free agency, I don't think there'll be massive spenders anywhere else. Like I don't think that it would be wide receiver either.
No, they have just dumped so much money into that position, and ironically, their best player is a rookie.
Okay, so let's look at the updated depth chart. All right. We got well, just before we get into the mock draft, because we're about to unleash the mock draft simulator on Jags fans.
Unleash.
We got Agnew and Ben Johnson taking over as general manager and head coach.
Right.
And then when it comes to the roster, obviously, we got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. Well, I should say Evan Ingram and Christian Kirk are no longer on this team. We got Trevor Lawrence at quarterback, Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby at the running back spots. Don't have a tight end. We got Brendan Strange. I mean, he's still on the roster, but he's the starting tight end at this point. Don't really have a starting tight end. You got Anton Harrison and Walker Little at the tackle spots. You got Ezra Cleveland. Mitch Morris is still here. Then we signed James Daniels and Tevin Jenkins. You got Brian Thomas Jr. You got Parker Washington. You got Gabe Davis, Devin Duvernay as well. Defensive side of things, Trayvon Walker, Arik Armstead, Davon Hamilton, Josh Hines-Allen, that's your front four. Don't hate it. They got Miles Cole and Mason Smith as well, Jordan Jefferson from last year's draft too. So I really don't hate that front. Devin Lloyd, Foyesay Luakon, Chad Muma, those are the linebackers. And then we've got Ronald Darby still under contract for 1 year, but we added DJ Reed or Charvarius Ward. You can pick one, pick your poison there. Darnell Savage and Andre Cisco are playing safety. Tyson Campbell, Jerry Jones. And they've still got a decent amount of money left over. So they spent on, in my opinion, what they needed to, but they didn't like go down to the cap floor. They allowed themselves to still have a little bit of extra cap flexibility to maybe sign somebody else in training camp or whatever if somebody comes available via trade, or you can even take that money, roll it in next year, not have your books as tight, and see where your team is at after the first year of a new head coach and a new general manager. You like it?
I do. I think it's a good start to turn things around in the Trevor Lawrence era.
Especially because they have a first-round pick, they have a second-round pick, they have 2 third-round picks, and they have 2 fourth-round picks because of the move back in the Dallas Turner trade, where the Vikings traded up to go get Dallas Turner at number 17 overall last year, and the Jags moved back. They moved back 6 spots to then draft Brian Thomas Jr., who they are surely happy with. So because they have the extra third and the extra fourth, Connor, how you feel about doing 4 rounds?
Yeah, we got to do it.
All right, we got to do it. We convinced him to do it.
Unleash the mock draft simulator.
There it is in all its beauty. What's cool about this one? There it is.
You get the first pick. You can take any player in the draft you like.
Number 1 overall. So we're entering in the draft. So we talked about wide receiver. We talked about corner. We talked about interior defensive line. We talked about offensive line as well. A lot of flexibility here for what the Jags can do. They could also trade back. Obviously, they don't need a quarterback. They can trade back to one of these quarterback needy teams. You go back to 1, 3, 5. Depending on what the Titans are doing, 7. Depending on what the Jets are doing, maybe 6. Right. So there's a plethora of options for you within the top 7 for you to be able to move back. Now, it's not like a Caleb Williams type of a draft where trading back from number 1 overall is going to get you generational pick wealth. But It gets you something, and you don't need a quarterback. And you might be able to still get your hands on a wide receiver like Tetairoa McMillan, a defensive tackle like Mason Graham. The one player that you wouldn't get is Travis Hunter. Unless you are moving back to number 2 overall and guaranteeing that you are the next team to pick.
And that would be my move.
You would move back to number 2?
Yep, and nowhere else. Not in this draft. I don't think.
What do you mean not in this draft? Oh, you're saying like not in this.
I would want to come away with Travis Hunter if I'm Jacksonville in this scenario. Now, here's the good news. I think you could squeeze a 3rd-round pick out of the Raiders to do this.
Oh, I think you squeeze more than that.
You could.
Remember, it's not just the Raiders moving up to number 1. They're bidding against all the other teams.
That's exactly right. Now, here's the, and this won't factor in today's show because it's impossible. There is a dynamic. Let's assume they're coming up for Shadur or whoever this is. Although I still have Cam Ward as my top quarterback. I want to make that clear. There is like a feel that maybe Dion, there is kind of a, hey, we'll go here, we won't go there. We don't know that yet, but it feels like that. I mean, he's hinted at that himself, Dion. So that can hurt your trade value.
Yeah, if you want.
I'm not doing that today because we don't know the teams. We don't.
No, you're right. But I do like the idea of the trade back because I think it's fun.
It is fun. And going by the Rich Hill trade chart on Draft Tech, the number 1 overall pick is worth 1,000 points. The number 2 overall pick is worth 717. For those at home wondering what the 283 point threshold kind of walks around, that's somewhere between the 18th and 19th pick in the draft. Obviously, they're not getting another 1st rounder to flip spots. But the point is, to your original point, Trevor, it's probably worth more than just a 3rd-round pick.
No, 100% it's worth more than a 3rd-round pick.
I mean,
in fact, I'd tell you it's probably worth.
I think you're getting 34 from the Raiders.
You're getting 34 from the Raiders. Yeah. Which
give me a hell yeah, brother. Like,
hell yeah. What? What?
That's exactly what this feels like. And you know damn well the Raiders got to do it if they want Shadur Sanders.
What's the last draft where we had 1 and 2 trade? No, well we had 2 and 3 trade.
Yeah, it was the Trubisky.
The Trubisky trade. What was
has it happened? It has to have happened.
What was the package price for Trubisky?
It wasn't cheap, considering it was just a flip for a 2 and 3.
Let's see. The Bears gave up a 3rd-round pick and a 4th-round pick this year and a 3rd-round pick in 2018 to move up 1 spot.
That's a good price in that draft. Because remember, in that draft, the way they're viewed now, like people didn't view Mahomes the way they do, obviously now. Deshaun Watson, it's not like it was you were coming up for, like there was other quarterback solutions that everyone consensus felt great about.
All right, I'm picking the Raiders here. Let's do 34. We'll give you 1 and 2 swap. 34 and man, I'm wondering if you get a 3rd rounder next year. Or if it's gonna be a 4th rounder next year.
Why don't you do a 4th rounder this year? You get 103.
Well, at that point, they've already got 2 3s and 2 4s. So to be realistic, I mean, like that's a huge ass draft class. And maybe the new general manager wants it. You want to do it? I mean,
what could go wrong? The last time it took 12 players, not a single one was a hit.
Fine, I don't care. All right, we're going to a 2 and a 4 this year.
We can go back up though with these assets.
Okay, all right. So Jacksonville. So
I'm getting crazy here. Just
Raiders
just roll with
Raiders go at 1. Who do you think they're going to take? You think they're going to take Genty in the MBS?
They're going to take.
If they take Travis Hunter, I'm going to be pissed.
I'm going to be furious. I'm going to be actually furious online.
Woo! All right. We're just going to imagine that's quarterback.
Yeah, it's not. So the Jags get Travis Hunter at 2 after accumulating more assets, which is probably your dream scenario if you're a Jacksonville fan.
Yes. Travis Hunter, I mean, the flexibility that you would have, I mean, for the Jags at this point, if they sign a top tier corner in free agency, then you set yourself up so beautifully because now you have a starting cornerback group of Ward or Reed, Tyson Campbell, Jerry and Jones, and then Travis Hunter, if any of those guys go down at any point in time, but then you also
could be a matchup player.
But then you get to, right, it's almost like a matchup player, but then you also get to play him primarily as a wide receiver. So it's Brian Thomas and Travis Hunter. Whew.
Right. Which, hey, there's a world where that's what he wants to do. We don't know yet.
It's true. It's very true. So because of the trade, we now have pick 33 and 34. I don't know why these quarterbacks are here. Somebody else.
Just ignore them. It's fine.
No, I know, but somebody else pointed this out to me, and I need to get this fixed. So I'm going to get this fixed. I promise. I'm going to get to the bottom of it.
Yeah, we're not the engineers, but we'll give it a go.
33 and 34. Okay,
see. My take is here, and it's too late for this because I'm a moron. The value of 33 and 34, 280.
You would have moved up?
I would have went back up and tried to get Mason Graham.
Oh!
Although you wouldn't have, I would have tried to get Mason Graham. So you went 4th. Okay, that kind of nukes that because it would have costed you 33, 34 and more capital.
And like your first next year. That's
what I'm saying. So you can't do that. I thought he was going to go more towards 8 or 9.
Yeah, no.
Okay, so we can't do that here. It's just an idea. All right, so let's see what we can do. Forget everything I ever
almost lost my shit.
Forget everything I've ever said.
Okay. I mean, edge rushers are plentiful here.
Yeah, but they're good at edge.
And so are interior defensive line, though. That's where I really want to. I like the interior defensive line play.
They need interior defensive line. TJ Sanders. You know, it's funny that it's early, but I would like to come out of this draft with the Godfather for them. They need that leverage monster, fire hydrant, scrapper.
Have you watched Alfred Collins yet?
No, I have not.
Look at the run defense grade, man.
That's insanity. Look at the
defensive tackle for Texas. I mean, he did not get a lot of play last year because Tavondre Sweat and
he plays the same. He filled Sweat's role. It feels like.
Yeah, he is a good football player.
That's a good fit.
I actually prefer him a little bit to Corleone.
The Godfather, who is definitely a different kind of player.
And
Corleone's going to have, of course, he's going to have to go through medicals and all that stuff, which is important.
I want a pass rusher at the 3 technique spot. I want defensive tackle from I want either TJ Sanders, the defensive tackle from South Carolina, or Omar Norman-Lott, the defensive tackle from Tennessee. Sanders has more solidified, like he's done it for a couple of years now. Norman-Lott gives you some crazy athletic potential, in my opinion. I just think he's a really good football player. But
I've been more impressed with Sanders. I got to watch Lott because he's been popping off name-wise for a while now. This has been a breakout year for him. Really interesting guy. Kind of came into the year as a very late day 3 prospect.
Yep.
And he's played himself pretty comfortably into day 2, it looks like. But I think I kind of nailing it, harping on what you said. Sanders' sample size gives me a little bit more faith on his floor.
Okay, so let's do Sanders. So he could be a little bit of a pass rusher, more guaranteed pass rush in the interior as a 3 technique guy. We're still ripe for, dude, man. I mean, you could just set up an insane secondary and draft Jahdae Barron and just have him be a safety.
Yeah, but I think we need another body on the offensive line that's young.
Okay. It's fair,
right? I mean, I don't want to run this unit back, or at least have somebody. Sabania and Booker are exciting to me here.
But we have 65 as well.
So you think you can get? I don't think either of those guys. That seems a little late for them. I don't know. Maybe I'm off on that.
I'd actually pick Zabel.
Okay.
Gray Zabel from North Dakota State.
Yeah, who's probably going to play guard at the NFL level, but
center.
Yeah, he could go that way. He'll probably get center looks at the Senior Bowl, I would think.
He's so Graham Barton-ish to me.
It's weird because
he's so Graham Barton-ish to me.
He has the movement skills that Graham Barton had. It's interesting with Zabel. There aren't a lot of, although Joe Tippmann is a recent one, 6'6" centers.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, if you play with good leverage, you'll be fine.
I like Zabel here because, again,
I think fit. It's a really good fit.
I think he could either him or James Daniels in this exercise takes over for Mitch Morse when he retires.
I'm down with this. I'm very down with this.
All right, Greg.
I'm excited to see Zabel at the Senior Bowl because it's the classic FCS guy that gets the competition bump there.
Yep. Okay, so 65. Now top of the third round for them. Dude, how do we have so many picks left? We have 5 picks left. Oh, the Godfather's here. Oh, they take Collins? Buffalo Bills.
That sucks. You after round and found out.
Damn, they also took Gunnar Helm.
Yeah, those were all good options. Go to tight end. That we might have screwed that part up because I think they need a big time tight end.
Yeah, but I don't think we were going to take one. We did the right thing though. We took the defensive and offensive linemen at 33 and 34. Yep. The only way I would have gone against this strategy is if I would have paired one of these picks here to move up to get Colson Loveland or Tyler
Warren. I agree. That's a good call out.
Which I like that strategy a lot.
Quick question while I have you here. Because of the down year, are you that low on Luke Lachey?
Yeah, I mean,
that's really low. I'm surprised to see. I know they can't pass the ball. That's not his fault, but
no, it's true. He's just been so low impact for me. But when we go through final film evals, I'll have a chance to really sit down and watch multiple full games of a lot of these guys. So I think him and Ferguson as well. I've been a little bit more impressed with. Certainly,
I like Ferguson a lot this summer.
You did.
I was very impressed with him, and I think he's had a good year for a great team.
I think we go Eli Stowers or Harold Fannin Jr. here at tight end.
So here's how what this comes down to me. If you're trying to replace Evan Ingram, you take Fannin Jr. But if you want to play with a real tight end in the offense, then you don't. Now you could do both. So if you're trying to replace Ingram, I think you take Fannin.
Let's take Fannin.
Because what do we think Fannin is? Like 230?
Yes.
They list him 230, so maybe not even. Yeah,
I don't think he's that lower than 230 though.
No, because
they still play him in line. Like his blocking stuff still isn't bad. Look, run blocking great. I mean, like that stuff. It's
Isaiah Likely-ish. Likely was like that coming out.
Yeah.
Or you watch him play, and you're like, how the hell does this guy ever block? And he did.
I think Isaiah Likely is more fluid in how he moves than Harold Fannin Jr.
I agree. Likely, it was very good prospect.
Just so we want to try to be better at this for people who are just kind of like getting into draft season, tuning in the podcast for the first time. Harold Fannin Jr. is the tight end at Bowling Green. He's the most productive tight end in the country this year. He has a 96.1 receiving grade. Just a phenomenal season. He got snubbed for awards, in my opinion. Should have been able to take home multiple awards this year. But with Evan Ingram out and us getting some extra free agency money, I'm going to draft Harold Fannin Jr. for us here.
Okay, rock and roll.
Third round, which brings us to the bottom of the third round, close to the bottom of the third round, pick number 92.
Can we look at the running backs?
Sure. They did just draft Tank Bigsby, though.
They did. Who's fine.
I like Bashal Tootin, man.
I know. He's had a good year.
He's had a really good year.
He's got a Senior Bowl, I believe.
Dude, he is my type of running back. He just will make you miss. He's got great one-cut ability. Him and Taj Brooks are going to be my guys in this class.
I would take Monungai here, but maybe they feel like Tank is a similar player.
I don't think they take running back at the third round.
Etienne's last year of his deal is next year with the 5th-year option. And he has been hurt a lot.
Yeah, you're right.
I think it's a sneakier need for them at 92, not in the top 70. Damn, a good wide receiver board.
I like the idea of hitting wide receiver, to be honest with you.
I'll say it right now. Jaden Higgins is going a lot higher than people think, man.
Think he's going 92? Because if he is, we can take him right here.
Sure.
So that would give us Brian Thomas Jr., Jaden Higgins, Travis Hunter, Parker Washington, Gabe Davis.
Which is how Higgins plays a plenty of power slot for Iowa State. He also plays on the outside even more, but he plays both inside and outside.
Yep.
Man, I got to watch his teammate, who I've seen a little bit of this year, but
Jalen Noel is good.
Noel looks really good.
Jalen Noel is good.
From afar.
All right, let's take Higgins.
Higgins is a damn good player.
All right, let's take Higgins. Take Higgins here, 92. So now we're back-to-back, top of the 4th round because...
Nuts.
Love this for us because of the Raiders trade, getting the Raiders 4th round pick. So, okay, now I'm cool with Monangai. If you want to take Monangai,
I would take Monangai.
Okay, let's take him with one of these picks. The Rutgers running back, who's had a pretty good season. Not as good of a year as last year. Man, this one's true dealer's choice, I think.
Yeah, you really could do just about anything. You know what's a sneaky one here? This might be the spot to even think about taking a developmental backup quarterback.
I'd take a tackle, honestly.
You would take an offensive tackle?
Yeah.
Let's
just to do it, man.
I like the Oregon guys. And Chase Lund, who would probably profile as a backup for Walker Little.
I like Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon, who just
need to catch up on him.
He accepted an invite to the East-West Shrine Bowl, so I'm excited to see him. Josh Connerly's been playing great as of late. It's going to be fun to watch him in the college football playoff, getting to go up against really good competition because you see him against Michigan. This is his 2 lowest graded games were against Michigan and Ohio State. It's his 2 best competition.
I know. I'm all over the place on him because I watched him over summer from a tools perspective, and I had him as tackle 4. I was like, a lot of people was that him. Okay? I didn't know that. And then you're right though. Like there are just times where I always want more.
There are people who have Josh Connerly as like a fringe 1st round prospect.
I mean, tools wise, like I totally get it. I don't think he will end up going there, but
no.
This summer I was like, this is the guy that's has a chance to make the leap. Emory Jones, we've talked about a lot from LSU, tackle that really just, hey man, we said it over summer. Like he just looks like plays like a guard.
Probably a guard.
Lunt's a Senior Bowl guy. He'll be very interesting from UConn.
I would be okay with both Jack Nelson or Chase Lunt here. I guess Ajane Cornelius. I like honestly though, going by my board, like I got Brendan Crenshaw-Dixon up here, Ajane Cornelius, and then Emory Jones, Chase Lunt, Jack Nelson. I don't know how you feel about any of those guys, but I'd take a tackle here just to make sure.
I would take Connerly because he has the best tools. And
let's say that Connerly's
yeah, that's fair. Let's be
I'm
fair.
lower on him. Just to be transparent with everybody, the way the MDS works is like right now it's just my board. But once we get into more consensus stuff about what we think will happen, I can adjust it. So the board is sort of operating under what we think is going to happen, not just my rankings. This year we're able to do that. And so it's going to work a lot more smoothly for you. I'm excited to kind of roll that out. But we can say that Connerly's going to be off the board because it does feel like
that's fair.
The NFL or just people in the NFL are going to draft him higher than what I have him ranked in this class. So any of the other guys stand out.
So full transparency, I need to watch more Crenshaw-Dixon, but I would take Lunt here because I just think he fits the type you want behind Walker Little.
He's very solid of a player. 6'8", 305. He's huge.
I'm telling you, like I'm not the same player, but it's similar pathway. Big guy, moves well. That would probably be my thought. And I'm not thinking Emory Jones here because we already took our interior player.
We did. Well,
I'm going to watch more of Membao too, who I know you've talked up on.
Yeah, I wonder if he is a guard as well. He's having a really good year. 6'3" though.
Ooh, I don't know if he's what he measures in that.
I don't think he'll be a tackle at the NFL level. So I would go with Chase Lund or Brandon Crenshaw-Dixon, in my opinion.
There's some giants in this class.
Yeah,
Crenshaw-Dixon 6'7". Have you seen Holland Pierce for Rutgers yet? The tackle for them?
Yeah, this dude right here, 6'8",
344. He's the biggest human every game. It's hilarious to watch that side of the line for Rutgers fold people.
Jack Nelson's pretty big too, 6'7" as well. Got a lot of big height.
Yeah, Jack. He's a very not slender. That's not the word I'm looking for. Just like very lengthy kind of guy, not like beefy.
All right,
he's played a lot of football for Wisconsin.
Shout out the Senior Bowl. We'll take Chase Lund here.
Cool.
And then we got one more pick.
Last pick. God,
129.
Okay. I mean, can we stash Harold Perkins just to have fun? No way, right? Like he's got to go earlier. Or no?
Does he?
I don't think so. We don't know what position he plays, and he's hurt. Yeah, I know.
I'm taking Harold.
Can we look at the situational pass rushers on the board? Just a rotational guy.
Oh, sure. Yeah. I mean, that could be Harold Perkins.
Oh, Mikhail Kamara on Indiana is freaking awesome.
Fun.
He's been kicking ass for that defense all year. Like absolute great motor, good size profile, good hands. He's 6'1", 260-ish.
The only thing is that he's just short and he's limited with length.
Oh yeah, no, that's why he's available.
Passer.
Like that's why we can get him at 129 instead of taking him top 100. He's put on the field on passing downs and like let the guy pin his ears back and roll.
Our Mason Thomas is the same way. I view these guys exactly the same.
And this is close to where they will go.
We'll go with Mikal Kamara.
Cool.
From Indiana.
That's a fun one.
All right, there we go. That's a draft. Massive
Holy
draft here. We're not going to grade well because we quote unquote reached on some of these players, but
C+ is good for the Mike McCarthy and the PFF basement grade. He does the grades for these.
He does all of them. Yeah, he
did. Then he got the Cowboys job.
And then he got the Cowboys gig. Right.
But he used to get you do a mock draft on the simulator, and Mike McCarthy would give you a grade.
100%,
He just sits there all day and all night, no matter what time you're on. He punches back a grade.
So after this draft, what we're looking at with the depth chart, it is Trevor Lawrence at quarterback. It is Travis Etienne, Tank Bigsby, and Kyle Monungai at running back. It is Harold Fannin Jr. and Brandon Strange at tight end. It's Walker Little and Anton Harrison at offensive tackle, but we also have Chase Lunt now at offensive tackle in reserve. With free agency, we have James Daniel, Mitch Morse, Ezra Cleveland, and now Greg Zabel to throw into the mix. Oh, as well as Tevin Jenkins too. So that's our interior offensive line. And then at wide receiver, it is Travis Hunter, it's Brian Thomas Jr., Parker Washington, Gabe Davis, Jaden Higgins. On the defensive side of things, Trayvon Walker, Josh Hines-Allen, and then we added Mikal Kamara as sort of that situational pass rusher player. On the interior, it's Arik Armstead, it's Davon Hamilton. Now it's TJ Sanders as well, who we drafted in the second round. At the linebacker level, it's basically, Devin Lloyd, Foyesé Oluokun, Chad Muma. And then at corner, Travis Hunter can be some sort of a corner there for you, but it's one of Charvarius Ward or DJ Reed. It's Tyson Campbell on the other side. It is Ronald Darby in reserve. We've got Jerrion Jones starting at the nickel spot, and then it's Darnell Savage and Andre Sisco at safety. Brother, I love it.
A lot of fun. It's fun to do a draft of this volume.
Yes. This is a lot of fun. We would love to hear from you guys. Let us know what you thought of our overall strategy, what we talked about with the Jacksonville Jaguars, how we think that they could be better moving forward, whether you think this is the offseason to do it. Give us your head coach candidate that you would love to see, general manager if you would love to see Trent Baalke gone. Tell us your free agency strategy. If we got rid of some guys that you say we absolutely got to keep, we'd love to hear from you. And then talk to us about your draft strategy. Who you'd be taking at number 1 overall. If you'd be trading down, you can give us a mini mock draft too. We would love to hear you. Best way to do that, youtube.com/@NFL Stock Exchange. You could also hit us up on Instagram and Twitter at Tampa Bay Trey, at Connor J. Rogers. We will have another Fix Your Franchise for you next Monday. But then just to give you guys a heads up, next Thursday is when we will begin early positional grades. So it's when we really take a look at, now that the regular season is done in college football and championship weekend will be done, we will be into bowl season. We'll be able to give you those early grades and those early rankings for a lot of positions. Next Thursday, we are starting with wide receiver. And then the next week, we will probably do one more Fix Your Franchise and then get into more positional rankings. And then we'll start to double up. We'll get to 2 positional rankings, early positional rankings every single week. And we'll probably do that as well as, throw a mock draft in there at some point up until All-Star weekend. So we're going to run through a ton of positions, as many positions as we can before we get into, the Senior Bowl, the Shrine Bowl, all that good stuff. Connor, got anything else before we get out of here?
No, a ton of fun with this team because obviously another one that falls into the bracket of they have talent. They have an owner that in theory can financially turn things around. They got to get the hires right and they got to draft right, which is often the case when turning around a football team. But sometimes the very cut and dried rebuilds are the best ones.
This is a ton of fun. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it. Jags fans, we hope that the wait was worth it. Thank you guys so much for watching and listening to the NFL Stock Exchange podcast. We'll see you guys next week.